Speaking is a learned skill. For some, it is an easy and preferred method of communicating. For others, it is an obstacle and giant wall of intimidation. For some, it is nonverbal and requires the use of gestures or signs. Others use verbal language and voices to speak to one another. However, there is a subsection of these verbal speakers who find speaking to be a physical struggle. One form of this struggle is stuttering. Stuttering is a communication disorder which involves the involuntary action of repeating sounds while speaking. While you all probably know someone who stutters, or stutter yourselves, how much do you really know about the technicalities of the speech impediment? Today, I would like to discuss the reasonings of why people stutter, the recommended ways to communicate with a stutterer, and current treatments for this communicative issue. Let's begin by distinguishing the discoveries and ideas behind why people stutter. There are three commonly recognized forms of stuttering. The first is known as developmental stuttering. This is found in childhood when children are learning to communicate and struggle with language and speech skills. The second type of stuttering is known as neurogenic stuttering. The root word neuro relates to the brain. The part of your brain which controls speech is called the cerebrum, which is the largest part of your brain. Neurogenic stuttering results from brain lesions such as stroke, trauma, or cerebral infarctions. The third type of stuttering is known as psychogenic stuttering, which relates to a disruption in the psychology of a speaker, typically found in adults due to a mentally traumatic event. John Baumgartner and Joseph Duffy conducted a study in the late 90s involving a group of 49 stutterers with no previous neurological issues diagnosed. After formal psychiatric evaluation, patients were diagnosed with conditions such as conversion reaction, anxiety, depression, and personality disorders. Now that we know some of the reasonings behind stuttering, let's talk about how to properly communicate with someone who suffers with this barrier. Individuals who stutter desire the same value of communication as anybody else. In order to achieve this, however, we as non-stutterers need to understand how to handle our end of the conversation. We need to understand that stuttering is very common. According to the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, over 3 million Americans stutter. While approximately 75% of children outgrow their developmental stuttering, 25% continue to struggle with it onto their adult lives. We need to understand their perspective and adapt our way of communicating. The NIDCD advises us to allow them time to speak in full, to reduce time pressure by speaking slowly. Listen attentively and focus on the content of their speech, not necessarily its deliverance. It is very important to learn how to properly converse with people who stutter, but how do they relieve this obstacle for themselves? Stuttering does not have a single definite cure, but there are treatments and methods for whom it affects. According to the Mayo Clinic organization, some common forms of treatment include speech therapy, which is where you talk with a speech therapist, you learn how to slow down your speech, and you notice when you stutter. Eventually, through doing this, you are able to pick up speed and speak with a higher fluency. Another kind is using modern technology, which involves speaking with devices that can use delayed auditory feedback, which requires speakers to slow down their speech and concentrate when they talk. It can also be used to speak at the same time as a recording, practicing accuracy and fluency. There's also cognitive behavior therapy, which is a type of psychotherapy, which is where people learn to deal with psychological causes and results of stuttering. There's also parent-child interaction, which helps soothe the impediment in early years of developmental stuttering. This is when a parent can sit down with their child at home and practice speaking in a calm and safe environment. Understanding the delicacy of stuttering leads us to more efficient communicating in the world. As we have discussed, stuttering is an obstacle which many people face in various circumstances, whether it be in the early years of developing speech skills or in adulthood due to some form of pain. Comprehending the speech impediment's complexity can undoubtedly enhance our ability to empathize and better speak to those it affects. By looking into the causes, types, forms, and treatments of stuttering, we will find ourselves gaining the ability to work with wobbling words.